Just going on to the hybrid then, Will.
It will be a real strategy game for when you use it.
So basically full charge, and maybe the decisive move is going to be later on the last lap then.
It could be later if the guy in front burned his on the back straight. All depending on conditions.
Hello and welcome to the RACER Debrief. I'm Lawrence Foster. We've got David Melcher Lopez and a very special guest, 2018 Indy 500 winner, two-time IndyCar champ, and the king of IndyCar poles. Welcome, Will Power.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Hey, our pleasure. Well, we know time is short. We're on a race weekend, so let's dive straight in. We're looking ahead to Indy. We've got it where the first phase of the season is almost over. Your mindset in a couple of weeks' time will obviously be turning to Indy. Just give us a lowdown on just how things have gone so far in 2025.
Well, the first race was very disappointing to be out in the first corner. Certainly the mindset was getting through the first corner, getting through the first lap. You know, there's no sort of desperation or aggression in my mind, and just was check up, just one of those things.
Yeah.
Just tap the guy in front and he spin, and we're both out. So that was sort of almost a reset, and then straight back at it at Thermal. It was, funnily enough, when you think about it, I lost 0.2 in the first corner of my qualifying lap at St. Pete, which, you only had one lap on those tires. And I did this, I lost 0.3 on the first corner of my lap at Thermal. So, 2 races in a row, I sort of, blew my chances straight away. First lap of quali, you kind of got to get your head back around this one lap qualifying stuff.
Yeah. And that's basically playing catch up from that sort of point.
In the race at Thermal was amazing.
Yeah.
But it was great to get back to 6.
Yeah.
And get some points on the board. I feel if we'd started at the front there, we would have a very good shot at fighting for the win. So
and I know that we went at RACER. It was almost like we said the sky was falling. Can you believe all 3 Penske's are this far back?
Yeah.
But it was another one of those great sort of Penske just keep digging and keep moving forward.
It was just a perfect race for me. Saving tires, pitting extremely early because I knew that I could get a very good fuel number. That's my strength. Getting a good fuel number with pace, and then just working through the traffic, and I thought top 5 would be very optimistic at the beginning of that day, but you can never, at IndyCar, it's like, I didn't get any yellows to help either. It was all done just on pure pace and passing and strategy. So it was a good effort.
What is your mindset at the moment on qualifying? I remember Dave spoke with Dave Faustino a couple of years ago where Dave Faustino was basically saying that, there's been a change in the way you approach qualifying. It's maybe not quite the same be-all and end-all that it would have been, as you sort of close in on Mario's record, or...
Maybe, yeah. I would say beating Mario's record probably made me focus more on the racing stuff. I think, I think having that pressure, your mind's on the qualifying. But I have the I feel like we would have made the Fast 6 at least got sort of in the top 10 at St. Pete. No, I felt the same at Thermal. It would have been thereabouts. Thermal, like in practice, always sort of in the top 6. So probably a kind of 6th to 10th car. Funnily enough, like when you have a terrible qualifying, you go back and we significantly change the setup for the better. So if you qualified 6th, you would have just sort of sat on that and been like, maybe you wouldn't have been as good in the race.
Yeah.
We changed the philosophy a bit, and it was a good change. So it was very difficult to get a direction there because you literally had one lap on the tires.
Mhm.
One lap and then the balance starts changing significantly. So it's very tough to say we need this or do a change because every time you went out, the degradation was so large that it was hard to get a read. So it sort of didn't, we're in the top 6, so we don't really need to, don't want to make any significant changes. So, yeah, there's always good that comes out of those bad results.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, you obviously, you and Will go back a long way in terms of, the joint authors, et cetera, et cetera. How have you noticed sort of like a change in Will's philosophy, in Will's way of going racing over the last few years?
I haven't. It's the same badass that he always was. But no, I agree that the desperation to get poles has, diminished. But
is that the right word? Desperation.
Yeah. Well, it came back this year. I was very, I actually last year missed out on pole a couple times by hundredths.
Yeah.
So my qualifying was actually better last year than I was in 23, and I came in determined to make the fast 6 each time and so on. But you can never predict how this is going to play out. The tire is significantly softer on the street courses.
Yeah.
And the road courses are black is supposedly harder, but it'll be interesting here to see. This is a little nicer on tires. Maybe you'll get St. Pete. You got 1.5 laps out of that tire, out of the pits real lightly on them.
Right.
You could start the next lap and be pretty good, and then I think here you're probably going to get 2, just a little nicer. Track temp's a little lower with the cement straights and so on, so it doesn't hurt the surface temp as much. Yeah.
So you just need to get the fronts warmed up so that you don't understeer.
That's exactly true. That's the two times that the front did not work. St. Peter went in. It's a bit easy to get rear tire temp because you're obviously driving from those wheels. It's got the forced driving, so you get more temp, certainly more surface temp. It's those little intricate things you got to learn when you're doing one lap.
Looking ahead to Indy, obviously, famously, it's the race that you haven't yet got a pole position for.
Yeah.
Dave mentions that a lot, by the way. Is it you and Dario? So,
no poles, but winners. But obviously, you had a tremendously strong run last year as part of the Penske lockout of the front row. Do you think that you will have that same kind of speed you'll have that same advantage over your opposition this year?
I think the opposition will have closed up for sure,
right.
But we have also made improvements.
Right.
So Roger got mad at me last year when I said I think that one of our cars will be on pole and we could be a front row lockout. I said something like that.
Yeah, here at Long Beach.
Yes,
actually,
it was right here. So I know in my heart what I think.
So Roger Will didn't say that you found a few things. It's basically just
I'm sure the competition is caught up. They're not going to be sitting around going, we saw what the Penske cars did. They're certainly going to go do their homework. Well, you got the hybrid. That's the only thing that I think that could throw a bit of a spanner in the works is. Is there differences in drag with different hybrids?
Right.
There's something you can't open that thing up, you can't change it, so you're at the mercy of the hybrid you get. And when I think about all the drag reduction stuff everyone does with gearboxes and uprights and all that now, I'd be shocked if they were completely consistent.
Just going on to the hybrid then, Will, just talk to us about the harvesting at Indy and how you actually envisage using the thing and how it maybe will become a factor in, the final few laps, the shootout at the end. Just give us your take on the theory of how this is going to work out at the moment.
It will be a real strategy game for when you use it. Ultimately, you'll see how it plays out in practice, I guess. But I feel like you'll be wanting to be in second with a full charge to use coming to the line, and maybe the guy who's ahead of you used his to get to the front. Yeah, it's going to be hard to say. That will be that will play a big part in the strategy at the end of the race if the weight hasn't caused too much degradation you can follow as close as we did last year. Last year was a perfect storm, because there was a storm. It was cool. Track temp was down. It had rained and it went late into the evening. The first time I've ever been there where you can just drive around the outside, you had 2 full lanes. So chances are, who knows, you're not going to get that situation again. Plus, you've added 105 pounds to the car. Yeah. So you would expect that it should be a little harder to follow.
So basically full charge, and maybe the decisive move is going to be later on the last lap then.
It could be later if the guy in front burned his on the back straight. You know what I mean? It'd be that sort of thing. Can you get him to burn his, or will the second guy burn his? The leader kept it. He burned his on the back straight to try to win it, and he's kept it and is able to, all depending on conditions. If it is this sort of race, or it's not just this 90-degree day, massive, 120 track temp, it's sort of just there's not enough tire left at the end to be able to even get a run.
What's the charging like at Indy in terms of you, and especially if you're into that sort of, it's the last 10 laps and basically no distractions, this is when you are sort of sending it. What is the charging like still in that period? And obviously we're talking theoretical.
How to charge?
Yeah, you're
going to grab, I don't know, you can set it up as a button or a paddle. You have a button or a paddle you're going to grab when you're in the tow of someone. I mean, ultimately, if you didn't want to lead, you just, slow yourself up with pulling the trigger on the regen.
So charging will lose you the lead then on those
it'll slow you up a lot. Yeah, it's like pulling a brake. It's drag, a lot of drag. Or you could just, if you're touching the limiter, just grab that. It's a limiter. Use it as a limiter. I mean, it's something that will be worked out in practice. You'll start to understand the sort of cadence and how can this work? When's the best time to recharge? Obviously, in the pack, it's going to be easy. You're sitting in big toes and you could use it every lap.
That's fascinating.
Dave, we've been sort of talking to various drivers about the hybrid thing, and it seems that now for this first part of the season, the fact you've got half a season of it under your belt and stuff, it's not kind of such a factor in terms of maybe everybody's gravitating towards you do the same thing at the same time.
Yeah,
but I guess in the
I think everyone on the road and street courses, I think everyone will be doing mostly the same. The recharging would be slightly different because some will do it. You can do it off throttle, you can do it part throttle. Teams and manufacturers might differ in that, but ultimately where they're pulling the trigger on each track, I'm sure their simulations come to the same conclusion that ours come to. Everyone comes to the same conclusion. Out of this corner, out of this corner, and out of this corner.
But then Indy is the big unknown. Well, relatively speaking, the big unknown.
Indy will be, very. It's I just had one shot at there. I can't remember when I tested there at or just one test day with it running in a pack and.
Oh, was this last October?
Yeah, it must have been. Yeah, and it was it wasn't worth very much.
Right.
It was very very small. Yeah, it certainly would be in this situation when you're trying to get a run to pass them. Every little tiny thing you can get matters at that point. But it wasn't oh my God, it was very quick, used up very quickly. Very quick, literally through a corner, it's gone.
Right.
You pull the trigger, as you start loading the corner, it's done.
Do you think there's more? Obviously, 3 Penske's, you've got sort of Santino kind of, as part of the club or whatever.
Yeah.
You talk about, making sure that you're harvesting in the draft. Do you think, okay, it's not the biggest factor in the world potentially, but do you think there will be more sort of teamwork involved in the charging and sort of working together? Or
no, that's
a no then.
Not in that race. No way. You're not even ever. It's just 100% for yourself for that race. It just is. no one's ever going, oh, it's, I've got to look after my teammates.
Yeah.
It's the Indy 500.
But what you were saying earlier about the you battle, trying to, if the guys use the hybrid energy down the back straight and you've stored some up, is there an obligation between Newgard and McLaughlin and your guys to actually communicate? Do they have that data on there to say, hey, he's used his
at the end of the race?
Yeah.
Oh, is it live? I think it is. I think you can tell when someone's used their hybrid. Yeah, that sort of communication would be very powerful, to be honest. Yeah, because if they've said he's just used his on the front straight, coming to the white.
Yeah.
Or if you're sitting in fourth or fifth, at that point you're just using it as much as you can. Like I just got to get to the front and have a shot. Yeah. It will be interesting. It may not be as big a deal as we think because it may not make a big enough a difference.
Well, you can tell Will that we're basically obsessing over it.
Yeah.
We've gone down a massive rabbit hole. Will is more of the case of it's there. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But when do you start? When do you get into an Indy 500 mindset?
Well, when I go to test, you'll be thinking about it and then immediately switch back to Barber and Indy road course.
Yeah.
Then you've got a lot of time.
But then opening day sort of does your focus, does your sort of is there a ramp up in your mindset once you're there, for the 10 or so days for pre-race?
You're thinking about I'm thinking about it now.
Okay, we just triggered him.
Yeah.
You are thinking about it on and off, but once you get into the grind of the actual race weekend here, you're just 100% in Long Beach mode. And when you're at the track, you're just there focusing on the things that you need to focus on. It's not, the team's done a lot of work in the off season. All the teams do. But when you turn up, it'll be just game on of focus. That's what I was talking to my engineer, about. There's no big chunks anymore. Like you turn up to a race so in the window, it's just these little tiny things, almost setup philosophies. It's just so small now. I'm used to sitting with Dave and talking. There's just not much more. We know it's just got this car in this window. We know every adjustment, what it does.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And everyone's got spy photos of every other car and every setup from the year before, and everyone just turns up. Just, right on the money for the most part. So these little details really matter. Which little details is just getting the right amount of tire temp for the one lap you get in qualifying is a big deal.
Yeah.
And that relation, you and Dave Faustino, it's basically like Lewis Hamilton and Bono in Formula One in terms of just that longevity. The fact that you are so familiar working together, does that sort of in terms of knowing what you can do, knowing what you would want to do, does that really sort of route on the weekend for you when you do sort of pull the car off the hauler? Does everything become more focused more instantly just because of familiarity of you two working together for almost 2 decades basically?
Yeah.
We know each other's lingo so well, so there's never any confusion in the feedback of what I want or need. When I tell him what the car's doing. It's just become more intricate, the details, how many sections you can cut a corner up into and phasing and, oh man, it's crazy. And driving has become the same for me as well. But the communication with Dave is very businesslike. There's no BS. It's zero joking. It's just efficient and don't want to know anything else but what is important. That's Dave. I'm a little
zero joking.
Zero, man. He is just absolute business.
Going back to your comment about how I've seen Will change in since he came on the scene in 05 over here, is actually just the strength of the competition and how he is having, without wishing to diss you, you're never going to take pole by 0.8 of a second ever again.
No.
Well, unless you manage to get through to Q3 having used only one set of.
No, Palou last
you just
week.
give him a target now. Don't prove Dave wrong. Yes.
You definitely won't do that here. This is like the most
exactly.
insanely tight for whatever reason. I don't know why, but it's so tight.
Well, it's only what.
It's just not enough corners.
Yeah, exactly.
There is actually quite a few corners. It's enough hard to get right.
How much did Felix beat you by last year?
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah,
it was like
Dave's rubbing this in.
200ths or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave, before you think of the next thing to basically diss Will about, I think we've come to the end of our time with Will. Will, you've got about 100 things you've got to do with Team Penske today.
Okay.
It's the Thursday at Long Beach, but I think every minute of Will's time is basically is planned. I
don't even know that, so I was I don't even know where I'm going after this.
It was only Liz who told me what he had to do today.
Yeah, Liz said something about autograph. It might be just signing some stuff in the truck.
Well, either way, Will is leaving us now. But thanks for the time and thanks for the insight.
Yeah, no,
we will
you.
Continue to obsess over hybrids at Indy.
Especially on ovals. Yeah, exactly.
It is interesting. Well, it does make a difference on ovals. Yeah. Like the short ovals, it is a thing. Yeah, you definitely use it. You will get past if you didn't use it, and the other guy got to run. Yeah, Indy. Don't know. We'll see.
Right, we will see. So, thanks very much. We'll catch you on the next RACER Debrief. Will, thanks for your time, and
Thank you.
You'll see this after the Long Beach Grand Prix, so we'll know what's happened. But we can still say Will
taken pole by 0.75 of a second.
Yeah,
just like I predicted he wouldn't.
Crazy.
Well, you said 0.8, so basically we need a 0.85 gap. So
yeah. Well, that's fun.
Wow.
All right. Well,
all right.
Cheers, Will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Dave, seamless segue. We've just managed to probably get Will Power fined for showing up to his autograph session late. But a few interesting things there with Will covering, almost the forensically small levels, between as Will pointed out at thermal, we're talking, a tenth or two, but the knock-on effect. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
How are you sort of seeing the bigger picture on this IndyCar season so far in terms of just the spread, the competitiveness, the tightness? I mean, has it moved on another level from where you're seeing it?
Yeah, I mean, the margins have, of course, got a lot finer as they do every year that we stick with the same car. Of course, the unknown has been how the hybrid works on the season's first half, having been introduced at Mid-Ohio last year. I think they're still going to learn how and when. I'd be very interested to see how close their preparations with the simulator are to how the hybrid actually behaves around here and where are the best places, because it's not like in Formula One with DRS where there are set places that it gets used. Here they can use it absolutely anywhere, and but I'm sure Chevy and Honda have informed their drivers where best to use it. The other thing I wanted to mention with Will was the fact that Chevy and Honda worked together to build this hybrid piece. Did that mean that there would be more of a similarity to how to use the hybrid at any given course? But honestly, every time I think the sims don't say it all, they kind of they do actually give really strong preparation for these drivers. What was the question? So I am obsessing over this hybrid piece, but
I'll move you on then. At the moment, right, we've got a sample of two races, 2 wins for Alex Palou, but I don't feel that we've got it where we've basically seen some fantastic strategy, some fantastic execution by Palou and Chip Ganassi Racing.
Yeah,
are we seeing something where there is also perhaps on these first series of races on these street and road courses a a little bit of a CGR, steal a march on the rest?
I think certainly at Thermal there was something to be said for how CGR performed there for sure, and I think it caught them out that they ended up qualifying behind an all McLaren front row. I think basically they had the pace to take pole and dominate there. At St. Pete, I never thought that they actually produced the fastest cars. I think they just nailed strategy.
Yeah.
And, if you give Pally and Dixon a strategic advantage, they're going to run with it and they're going to be flawless at running with it. So I don't think St. Pete demonstrated a Ganassi superiority. I'd like to think that. Do I like to think, or I don't know whether it's a hope or a reality here, but I believe the street courses will throw the most, will bring the field closest together. I think we're still yet to see the best from Andretti Global and Penske, and I do think Arrow McLaren have made maybe not a stride, but a step on the street courses as well. So, I still wouldn't like to ever gamble on anything in IndyCar because it's still so up in the air between at least a dozen drivers.
You've mentioned there Andretti, perhaps not being sort of, well, probably fully up to speed is the wrong expression, but maybe not quite kind of, ticking all of the boxes in quite the same way that CGR is. Who has maybe surprised you the most in terms of, not kind of being there on the mark at this point? And again, we're talking a sample of 2 races, but...
I expected a little more from Foyt because they have Penske gear. I think Maya Shank has shown that they are going to be able to take advantage of sharing data with Ganassi this year. But I think they're also going to be slightly limited on street courses by not sharing stuff with Andretti like they did in years past. So I'd be shocked if Felix took pole again this weekend, especially when Will's going to have an 8/10 margin over everyone felt.
We will revisit that, yes. Yeah.
I mean, the other people who I really want to see be strong and do what we know that they're going to be capable of is Prema.
Right.
Ryan Briscoe's driver advisor over there, and you just know that by the end of this year they'll have started to look like the Prema that we know from Europe and start to be scary fast.
But as a consequence of obviously, IndyCar and testing limitations, and I guess we would have expected the first 2 or 3 races to be not extended test sessions, but certainly a ramp up to a more true sort of take on their competitiveness.
Yes, yeah. I think we will see. I think we will see Andretti look like Andretti, and and hopefully that's not in a negative sense, because we don't want to see any more terrible pit stops for Colton, because it's just so dispiriting for the team and for anyone who wants this guy to fight for the championship every year, like we believe his talent can enable him to do. And I think we'll see Penske be Penske. The interesting thing about this weekend in Long Beach is that we'll have the Penske's way down pit lane, because it's decided by qualifying order from the previous race, and obviously they had a calamity previous race. So I'll be interested to see how the 2, 3, and 12 compete with each other this weekend, and whether they split strategies. I think there's a strange absence of that, by the way, in IndyCar. I think that there tends to be everyone goes on the same strategy when they really don't need to. Like, for example, watching the Formula One Grand Prix from Suzuka, I was pleased to see Leclerc and Hamilton go on to different strategies, because why not?
But as a counterpoint to that, where McLaren refused to sort of like, sort of split the difference and two bullets in the gun. So
exactly. Honestly, at 2/3 of distance, I'd have let Piastri try and take on Max, and if not, drop back behind Lando. But there you go.
Right, Dave, based on this being, we will be showing this after Long Beach, based on you making some fighting talk predictions on what will and won't do.
Yeah.
Just so we can kind of like, play the tape back and say, Dave, did you really predict that? Just give me a prediction for the front row, and give me a prediction for just a couple of guys on the podium. Actually, give me a winner.
Oh God.
Yeah. Because it's pressure.
I'd say Will on the front row with Christian Lundgaard.
Right.
And winner, either one of those two, or Herta Kirkwood. Andretti will be strong, but I think the strategy of Arrow McLaren and Penske is slightly stronger.
I'm not calling this a premonition, because it's nowhere near as strong as that. But I'm thinking, you said Herta and Kirkwood. I'm thinking this is when Andretti and its street course mojo come to the fore.
You're right.
And one of those guys is on the top step on Sunday. But all will have been revealed by now. So.
Yeah.
Dave, let's call it a halt on that one for the moment then. And,
before we make really stupid predictions, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you for the next RACER Debrief. Thanks for tuning in.